My name is John, and for over 12 years, I served in the Special Forces with pride and dedication. At 22, I joined the military, eager to make a difference in the world. Over the years, I deployed to some of the most dangerous places imaginable, enduring 3 grueling tours of duty. Each mission took me far from home for months on end, but it was a sacrifice I was willing to make for the greater good. My squad became my second family, 6 of us bound by loyalty and shared experiences in life-or-death situations. We forged an unbreakable brotherhood, a connection deeper than words. Back home, we held on to that bond with monthly barbecues or small gatherings, reminders that we had a life beyond the battlefield. It was during one of those gatherings, after I returned from deployment, that everything I thought I knew about my life began to unravel. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for over 10 years by then. She was my high school sweetheart, someone who had always supported my choice to serve, despite the long separations. We built a life together, a comfortable home near my base, surrounded by other military families. It felt like a perfect setup, balancing duty and domestic life. But on that sunny Saturday afternoon, as my squad and I laughed and grilled steaks at Mike's house, a hidden truth was waiting to surface. Little did I know that by the end of the day, the foundation of my life would crumble. What started as a simple errand to grab more beer from my garage turned into the discovery of a betrayal so deep, it still feels like a bad dream when I think about it. That afternoon, I walked back home to grab more beer for the barbecue. Taking a shortcut through the neighbor's yard, I decided to pick up some folding chairs from my shed before heading inside. As I entered through the back door and stepped into the kitchen, I heard Sarah and the other wives chatting in the living room. At first, their laughter seemed harmless, a casual gathering over wine. But as I moved closer, the words I overheard froze me in place. Sarah's voice rang out, full of excitement, recounting stories of infidelity with chilling nonchalance. She wasn't just confessing, she was bragging, sharing explicit details about her affairs. My loyal wife of over a decade was openly mocking the trust one had placed in her. Her words painted a grotesque picture of deceit. She described rendezvous in my car, cheap motels, even our own home. The spaces we had built together, filled with memories of love and laughter, were reduced to backdrops for her betrayal. The casual cruelty of her tone, the way she compared me to the men she had slept with, made my stomach churn. She dismissed me as a clueless fool, someone too blinded by trust to see the truth. The other wives joined in, swapping stories of their own infidelities and sharing tips on hiding their tracks, burner phones, secret accounts, excuses they had perfected over time. It was a conversation drenched in mockery and lies. Hearing Sarah insult me and laugh about my sacrifices while I was thousands of miles away, risking my life, felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I couldn't bear to hear another word, but I forced myself to remain calm. My instincts from years of training kicked in: stay composed, assess the situation, and plan. I knew I couldn't confront Sarah immediately. If I stormed in, I'd lose any chance to uncover the full scope of her deceit. So, I quietly grabbed the beer and returned to the barbecue. The walk back felt endless, my world crashing down with every step. By the time I reached Mike's yard, I could barely keep the anguish off my face. The guys noticed something was off but didn't press me. I mumbled something about feeling sick and sat down, struggling to contain the tidal wave of emotions. That night, lying next to Sarah in bed, I barely slept. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? How could the woman I trusted completely betray me like this? Memories of our life together played like a cruel slideshow in my head, each moment tainted by the knowledge of her infidelity. The person lying beside me wasn't the woman I thought I married. At dawn, I knew I had to act. I requested emergency leave, claiming a family issue. My commanding officer didn't ask questions, granting me the time I needed to figure out my next steps. That same day, I gathered my squad at Mike's house. I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. When I told them everything, the room erupted with anger and disbelief. These were men I had trusted with my life, and now they were learning that their own wives, our shared social circle, had betrayed them too. The shock rippled through us like an explosion. Some paced in rage, others shouted or stared silently at the ground. A few even started questioning their own marriages, wondering if their wives were involved. We spent the night drinking whiskey and sifting through the chaos of emotions: anger, grief, betrayal. Despite their own turmoil, my brothers supported me fully. Their loyalty in that moment kept me grounded, even as my world felt like it was falling apart. The following days were agonizing. With the help of my squad, I discreetly gathered evidence. I installed hidden cameras and voice recorders in my house and car, combed through Sarah's phone records, credit card statements, and emails. Every piece of evidence I found confirmed what I had overheard. Sarah's affairs weren't occasional lapses in judgment. They were calculated, ongoing betrayals. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed. My divorce attorney assured me that the evidence was damning enough to secure a favorable outcome: our house, my military pension, and no spousal support. Sarah would walk away with nothing more than her share of the savings. But before I could move forward legally, I had to confront her. The confrontation felt inevitable, a moment I had played out in my mind countless times over the previous days. I planned it carefully, knowing it had to be final and unambiguous. On the chosen evening, I took Sarah out to dinner at one of her favorite restaurants. The atmosphere was warm, the food excellent, but I barely tasted a thing. Every smile, every small gesture, felt like a performance, a deliberate act to keep her unsuspecting. After dinner, I suggested a drive to the bluffs overlooking the city. The view was stunning, a perfect contrast to the storm brewing inside me. When we arrived, I sat quietly for a moment, staring at the distant city lights as I gathered my thoughts. My heart raced, but my resolve was unshaken. I told her what I knew, laying out the truth with precision. Each detail felt like a hammer blow, not just to her but to the fragile remains of the life we had built together. I spoke about the affairs, the evidence I had collected, and my plans to end the marriage. It wasn't just about what she had done. It was about the pattern of betrayal, the calculated nature of her actions, and the way she had disregarded the trust and love I had given her. Her reaction came in waves. First shock, then denial, followed by a torrent of tears. She tried to explain, stumbling through justifications that felt hollow and meaningless. The woman sitting beside me was no longer someone I recognized. She was a stranger, desperate to salvage what she could of a crumbling facade. Her pleas for forgiveness and promises to change didn't move me. I had seen too much, heard too much, to believe her words now. The damage was irreparable, and I knew that nothing she could say or do would ever undo the betrayal. When I told her the full extent of what I knew, her face turned pale. She realized her secrets were no longer her own. My squad and their wives all knew, and the carefully constructed web she had spun was completely undone. Her silence after that was telling, a recognition that she had no way to regain control of the situation. That night, driving home, the weight of finality settled over both of us. Sarah cried quietly in the passenger seat, and I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The foundation of our marriage was gone, replaced by a void that could never be filled. The next morning, I left. I couldn't stay in the house that had become a monument to lies. The legal process began immediately, swift and efficient. Sarah offered no resistance, knowing she had no defense against the evidence I had. The confrontation was over, and with it, a chapter of my life had closed. It was painful, but it also brought a strange sense of relief. The truth was out, the lies exposed, and the path forward was finally clear. In the weeks that followed, life felt surreal. The house, once filled with memories of shared laughter and love, now felt cold and empty. But as the divorce proceedings unfolded, I began to reclaim a sense of control. The process was straightforward. Sarah didn't contest a thing. She knew the evidence left no room for negotiation. I walked away with the house, my pension, and my dignity intact. The judgment granted her a portion of our savings, but it was a small price to pay for my freedom. Despite her attempts to spin the situation on social media, those closest to us saw the truth. She had chosen deceit, and the consequences were hers to bear. Emotionally, it was harder. Anger, betrayal, and grief took turns weighing me down. There were days when getting out of bed felt like a monumental effort. But through it all, my squad remained by my side. These men, who had faced death with me, now stood as my support system in one of the most challenging battles of my life. To heal, I focused on rebuilding myself. I poured my energy into volunteering with veterans organizations, a way to turn pain into purpose. I revisited hobbies I had neglected, spent more time outdoors, and worked on my physical and mental health. Slowly, the anger subsided, replaced by a quiet determination to move forward. The scars of betrayal didn't fade easily, but they became part of my story, a story of survival and resilience. Looking back, I realized that my marriage had long been eroding beneath the surface, even if I hadn't seen it. The betrayal was devastating, but it also freed me from a relationship that had been slowly draining the best parts of me. I rarely think of Sarah now. On the rare occasion I do, it's with a sense of detachment, not bitterness. I wish her no ill, but her choices are no longer my burden to carry. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine again, and that's more than enough. If there's one thing I've learned, it's to trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Never let anyone make you doubt your own truth. Healing takes time, but it's possible, even after the deepest betrayal. To those of you reading this, remember that even in your darkest moments, you have the strength to rise again. If my story resonates with you, I invite you to follow my journey and find hope in your own. Together, we can face life's challenges and emerge stronger than ever. Thank you for reading. Please subscribe to my channel for more stories about resilience, recovery, and the pursuit of a meaningful life.